Though such leaders have been termed as traitors by Azimio leader Raila Odinga, Gashagua's position has angered Odinga, who feels it will also alienate ordinary wananchi who did not vote for President Ruto.
Yaani yeye hatambui wewe kama Mkenya, manake wewe huna share katika serikali yao. Serikali yao ni wao wenyewe yao wewe. Serikali ya Wakenya iko na inakuja.
Gachagua is seen as representing the growing disquiet within the alliance. There is also growing concerns that the increasing number of Azimio defectors, especially the move by Jubilee MPs rushing to President Ruto's corner, is likely to dwarf Gachagua's influence in Mount Kenya region. Gachagua has had even to ask those who want to join President Ruto to first pass by him for vetting, even as his initial goal to bring all the leaders from Mount Kenya region under him by December last year flopped. Now loyal Azimio legislators claim Gachagua is creating fodder for anarchy in the country.
Kenya ni ya Wakenya. Kenya haijakuwa kampuni. Kwa hiyo ashindwe shetani. Ashindwe shetani.
Kenya hii mkoloni akiingia ilikuwa Imperial British East African Company. Ndio sababu wa Kenya wazalendo walijitolea wakatoa mamlaka kwa mkoloni wakarudisha kwa wananchi wa Kenya.
You are asking Kenyans to start nursing other thoughts. That if I don't subscribe to a political thought, if I am not a shareholder in your so-called company, then I must look for ways of fending for myself, including refusing to obey rules, to obey laws, and to pay tax.
However, on Wednesday, DP Gachagua unapologetically reiterated his position.
Na yeye akiwa kiongozi wa nchi ataendelea hiyo kazi. Na mimi nikiwa kiongozi wa UDA naendelea kushughulikia watu wa UDA.
Former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is now the chairman of Azimio Council, once mocked the opposition for having lost the election.
Kumeza mate sio kukula nyama. Kwa hivyo wenzetu endeleeni kumeza mate, lakini nyama tutakula. Tuendelee.
This has now come to haunt former President Kenyatta's political side, even as Azimio leader Raila Odinga vows to continue rejecting President Ruto's government and salvage what he has termed as his stolen 2022 presidential victory. Vincent Odur, NTV, Nairobi.
All right, thanks, Vincent, for that report. Now, before we get into a conversation, of course, we need to look at what's in the dailies this morning. I'm going to begin with the Daily Nation. Here you have it. This is what we have on the front page. MPs say fix CBC or go back to 844. Well, the National Assembly and the Senate adjourned the House business to address the challenges plaguing the new school system, with the recent transition to junior secondary exposing the confusion, unpreparedness and the big divide between public and private institutions. You can get that full story on page 10 of the Daily Nation. Just adjacent to 8, Raila's ultimatum to Ruto. Page 6, let's get to that. Let's see how that looks, that story. The second page of the Daily Nation. DPP directs police to probe sexual abuse on tea farmers. That's the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nordin Haji, who's now ordered police to investigate sexual abuse claims on tea plantations. This follows that expose by international media house BBC that was aired over the weekend. Haji directed Inspector General of Police Jafet Kome to investigate those allegations of rape, sexual assault and deliberate transmission of HIV. He says these are grave allegations and are contrary to the Sexual Offences Act and Kenya Employment Act. We'll be keeping a close eye on the development there. Let me move forward. All right, food prices to remain high as disputes delay imports. A pricing dispute on the importation of cheap food could see households continue to endure high costs as government plans to lower commodity prices through the duty-free importation, which shows early signs of the making of a scandal, according to the Daily Nation. They're saying the duty-free import of rice, sugar and cooking oil expected to last for a year from January 20th, which are intended to help reduce the local retail prices of the commodities, but wrangling of the profit margins has overshadowed that program. All right, no very good news for Kenyans there. Let's move forward. It's a whole splash there. Raila threatens mass protests in 14 days. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party leader Raila Odinga yesterday giving President William Ruto's administration 14 days to address the high cost of living among a raft of other opposition concerns or face mass action, they say. But President Ruto promptly responded saying he will not be intimidated. Yesterday, Odinga had led the Azimio Brigade to a rally at the Jivanji Gardens, that is in Nairobi city center. He said that the high cost of living, stolen elections and unilateral reconstitution of the electoral agency will form the basis of nationwide anti-government protests. You can see the faces there. Wiper leaders Kalonzo Musyoka on one end, NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua on the other, and Raila Odinga in the middle. This is during yesterday's rally at the Jivanji Gardens, and their 14-day ultimatum. They were, protesting what they call high cost of living. All right, moving forward, Nyakango says governors are threatening me. That's the Controller of Budget who is accusing governors of threatening her in order to avoid scrutiny of billions spent by the counties. She appeared before a House team in Parliament whose office is constitutionally mandated to oversee the expenditure of public funds. She said the county bosses were blocking her bid to access and review key financial records. This claim comes amid adverse reports on government spending by the Controller of Budget as well as the Auditor General. Critics have, however, pointed out that the COB should stop wastage of funds before it happens rather than wait to conduct what they term post-mortem audits. Very interesting report there. You can get that, I believe that's on page 8 of the Daily Nation. I'm going to move forward. Just lastly on the Daily Nation, fix it or scrap it, legislators say of the problematic CBC. That's what is featured on the front pages of the Daily Nation. Members of Parliament calling on the government to speedily address some of those challenges plaguing the competency-based curriculum or else abolish it altogether. That's the National Assembly suspended business to discuss the teething problems they've said have hindered the smooth transition of the curriculum 6 years after its rollout. Okay, Business Daily, what do we have? Okay, let me push this to the middle. Tanzania tycoon gets nod. Okay, let me get my paper in the middle. Tanzanian tycoon gets nod for Kenya cooking gas plant. Kenya on Tuesday offered Tanzanian billionaire the license to set up a cooking gas plant and storage facility at the Mombasa port, averting a potential trade spat between the two neighboring countries. The energy regulator cleared Taifa Gas, which is owned by tycoon Rostam Aziz, who had previously lamented that Kenya had gone quiet over his inquiries to build a 30,000-ton liquefied petroleum gas handling facility in the country. Also still on the Business Daily, court suspends 30% tax on lump sum pension pay. That's the High Court which suspended the 30% tax introduced on the lump sum withdrawal of retirement benefits following the amendment of the Finance Act in 2020. And also KCB Group makes a U-turn on full buyout of DRC Bank. KCB has now retreated from an earlier plan of buying the remaining 15% stake in the DRC's Trust Merchant Bank, citing the need to ride on expertise of founding shareholders. And more stories on the Business Daily, including why the stock market, indeed. You can see numbers there at the very front page. All right, we're going to move forward. This is what we have on Taifa Leo. Mapambano, Raila aongeza gia. And it does state some of those demands that the Azimio team had put forth yesterday. Masharti makali kwa Ruto, and you can read that. That's a full splash there. You can get the full report on the second page of Taifa Leo. We had that story as well on the Daily Nation. And on the East African, still looking at matters regionally, Tshisekedi pushes Rwanda censure. Congo leader wants M23 backers reprimanded and EA forces mandate reviewed to include combat. But the AU prefers diplomacy. So what way forward? That's on pages 4 to 5 of the East African. All right. And just a quick look on exactly what's on the Standard, just on the front page of the Standard. Mass action warning still on the issue of Raila Odinga's demands to the Kenya Kwanza government. The big face of President Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga locking horns of an opposition call for massive mass action across the country. And also on the Star very quickly, the 61 billion debt threatening to derail Varsity is a very important story there with regard to higher learning institutions and some of the challenges that they have been facing, especially the financial challenge on the same. All right, so before I introduce my panelists this morning, well, after almost 3 years of persistent drought conditions, IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center today announced, actually yesterday, I beg your pardon, announced that below normal rainfall is expected in most parts of the Greater Horn of Africa over the next 3 months. Scientists from the region working under the umbrella of IGAD are asking governments in the Greater Horn of Africa and Eastern African region to ensure they have early warnings while also planning on how to mitigate shocks that may come with lower yields and a possibility of food insecurity. Leila Mohammed will be setting the, will be setting us the base for having this conversation. Let's take a look at that report.
The skies haven't shown much promise in terms of bringing down rain in this part of the world over the last 5 seasons.
For the past few years, we've experienced these dry conditions, and we are looking at high chances of a 6th fail season, especially over the arid and semi-arid regions of Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia.
The probability of drier than normal rainfall is also enhanced in parts of Rwanda, Burundi, eastern Tanzania, and western South Sudan.
Even if it rains, because of the failed rainfall season in the past, again, it requires a long time to recover.
The March to May season constitutes an important rainfall season. Experts have warned that if the general conditions of the season do not look favorable, they are seeking for governments to consult their weekly and monthly forecasts, which have a high degree of predictability.
It continues to improve its technology so as to provide better services and has recently upgraded its systems of forecasting through installation of modern, relevant equipment. There's what we call automatic weather stations. We have rain gauges. Most of these ones are now automated.
Scientists in the IGAD region say that warmer than normal temperatures are likely across the region, particularly over Djibouti, Eritrea, Sudan, northwestern South Sudan, southern and northeastern Ethiopia, northern Somalia, northern and western Kenya, and parts of southeastern and western Tanzania. This may heavily impact the breadbasket regions in the coming season.
Maize will require around 300 millimeters to go throughout the season, but we have very low chances that we are going to get that rain. So we are looking at a situation whereby the normal crop, that is the maize, is not going to be we are not going to get a good harvest.
Already, 11 million livestock have already died in the region. National governments, humanitarian and development actors have been called on to adopt a non-regret approach before it is too late.
A great task that I have at hand, which is the implementation of our ambitious ecosystem restoration program, where we plan to plant 15 billion trees in the next 10 years.
IGAD, which has partnered with various organizations, notes that prolonged and recurrent climate change-induced droughts will further worsen other existing humanitarian challenges in the region, including the ongoing hunger crisis, the impacts of COVID-19, and internal displacements. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
All right, and that story there by Leila Mohammed has set a foundation for us to have this conversation. In the studio, I am joined by Mary Kilavi, who is the Assistant Director, Public Weather Services, Kenya Meteorological Department. Karibu sana, very good morning to you. We also do have Lembara Sayana, who is the Program Director, the National Drought Management Authority. A very good morning, Karibu sana. Marceline Gudoshava, who is a climate forecaster from the IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, ISPAC. Thank you so much for joining us. And also Sally Anyanga, who is the East Africa Regional Communications Officer from the International Rescue Committee, who also released a statement that was on Monday, no, Tuesday, I believe, with regard to the drought situation in the region. All right, let me begin with you, Marceline, because we've just seen that report from IGAD and, you know, the focus, the predictions. Just give us an idea, because it doesn't really look very good for us, especially those living within the Horn of Africa. Just give us a glimpse of how that focus looks like for us in that period where we now, you know, understand that there's going to be low rainfall than what we had expected.
Okay, so I think, as you mentioned before, we have been in these conditions since 2020, and then in the upcoming season we can say that the conditions are drier than usual over most parts of the Horn of Africa. So looking at Ethiopia, Somalia, Eastern Kenya, the situation is not likely to improve all the way to the end of May. And considering that after that period, especially parts of Kenya, we are going into June, July, August, September, which is usually dry. So the situation will be really bad.
Not very good, not promising, at least for now. All right, because we actually saw a report there by one of our reporters that farmers had already began, you know, preparing to plant as they wait for the rainy season. All right, Mary, just give us an idea as well on how, you know, the weather patterns in Kenya have really changed over that period, because now we're experiencing the worst drought certainly in Kenya. Give us an idea of how that weather pattern has evolved and how we find ourselves in this situation.
As Marceline has mentioned, since the October, November, December rainfall season of 2020, we've been experiencing below average rainfall, and that has continued on to the next. That continued on to the next season. That's the MAM, what we call the long rain season of 2021, and to date, we still continue to experience, we've continued to experience low rainfall.
So it's almost the same data that you've been able to capture from, you know, the Met department as well?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And Sally, one of the biggest issues that we're facing from this climate change crisis is the drought. Let me get to you, Bwana Lembara. I mean, when we're looking at the drought situation right now, so much has been talked about, and you know, we've covered several areas and looked at how the situation is. But from where you sit, just give us, you know, an overview, a picture, an outlook of how we are faring as a country when you're talking about drought.
Thank you very much. And yes, this is the fifth failed season, as mentioned by my colleagues. And last week, His Excellency the President received a report on the impact, detailing the impact of the short rains 2022 short rains assessment that was done by the multi-sectoral teams across the county, all the 23 ASAL counties and 9 non-ASAL counties.
Right.
And this report highlights key impacts of the failed seasons, and one of the issue we are seeing, or the impact, the immediate impact we are seeing, is actually now the numbers affected increasing. Right, the report highlights that we have 4.4 people experiencing acute food insecurity. Malnutrition rates also increased to 970 across these counties. Outside the non-ASAL, outside the ASAL counties, we have 500, another 500 population that's affected by the drought. And the issue of malnutrition for the lactating and pregnant and lactating mothers, 142.
So that has actually increased?
Yes, it has increased. So we see the impacts of the worsening drought situation impacting across the sectors. The water sector, the water levels are actually diminishing. And even the other week, the hydropower sources are giving an alert that yes, our water levels are also going down. The pastoralists are struggling to access natural resources in the areas, and we are seeing huge migration patterns in the pastoral areas. Right now, we are seeing concentration of livestock herds in Tana Delta, parts of Samburu East, parts of Meru. All the pastoralists have actually, we have in Tana Delta, we have pastoralists from Mandera who have moved to Tana Delta. In terms of resource-based conflict, we are seeing also access and control over resources is driving a key driver in terms of food insecurity in these counties.
Okay.
Education is not spared either, because we have huge balances in terms of parents being unable to pay school fees. School meals is also an issue that some counties are registering dropouts as a result of lack of school meals. Issues on health. Yes, we have outbreak of diseases, cholera in Tana River and other counties. Kalaza is also another threat that's coming up. So
these are the ripple effects of...
Yes, these are the ripple effects that we are seeing. So the deteriorating situation continue to worsen the food security and nutrition situation.
Right.
That's what the report basically highlights about that. Yes. So given now the 5th failed season, and now the predicted 6th failed season,
right?
Then it means probably the scale of the scale is actually worsening, and the report also highlights that by mid-June we are likely to have 5.4 people now being food insecure.
Right.
And if now we are calling for the scale-up actions. We've been having series of meetings since His Excellency launched that report, basically to see the scale-up mechanism.
Okay.
So we are projecting that around 4 counties, actually 3 counties will slide into emergency situation. So it's not promising.
But we do not have any county that is under the emergency bracket at this point.
At the moment, Marsabit is actually shifting, sliding to emergency. Yeah.
All right. Let me get Sally here. Sally, I also saw that report that was released by the IRC. It talks about what Bwana Lembare is saying, 5.4. Part of the report says about 5.4 million people are projected to face high levels of acute food insecurity between March and June this year, of which 1.2 million people will likely be in the emergency phase. The latest projection highlighting a 43% increase of people facing high levels of food insecurity compared to the same period last year. What more did you manage to find out from this, data that you managed to get from those different parts of the country?
At the moment, what we are seeing, just as he said, the malnutrition numbers are going up day by day.
So that's one of the concerns, at least, from the report that you
Yes, from the report, especially between children who are the age of 6 and below.
Okay.
We're also seeing pregnant mothers and also breastfeeding mothers at a risk of malnutrition. And when this happens to them, they are at a risk because they end up having stillbirths or maybe miscarriages or newborn fatalities increase. And so one of the things that is really going up at a very high rate is the malnutrition, yes.
So that's a key issue now they need to look into. All right. So we'll continue the conversation, but we have to take a short break here on AM Live. Remember, you can always engage with us. The hashtag we use is AM Live NTV at NTV Kenya. You can also tweet me at Zainab Ismail. Let's have this conversation. We're back in a short while. Stay with us.
Kapia ngapa hivi. Unajua vile si ufanya kila saa mtu wangu. Sato, saa mambo itakuwa ni wagwan. Tunaanza pale kwenye radio ama ndio stereo 96.3 Nation FM. Alafu tukitoka hapo tunasababisha kwenye screens nani kuanzia 10 in the boom mpaka nini mo.
Yes, kama mazi all over your screens from 10 p.m. up until midnight mazi, tukiwaletea mazi mziki noma. Na Isa to mazi ja watchman. Tunajua kama kutoka 7 mpaka 10 na Isa to mazi nafanya get to know the most successful reggae and dancehall artists wenye unasikiaga mazi, yani wale artists wame make au sio? Ja watch na kamuze kama kawaida from 7 up until 10. Jam down baby.
I loved you when I never had a doubt. Never ever planned to be.
Pata taarifa teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go, getting the full story bila ngori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your taarifa teke.
Ladies and gentlemen, kwaje? You know what?
Big shout out to Vince on the beat, by the way. This is Vince on the beat, aka the beat killer. Na niko hapa ndani ya kwetu mix mbaya sana.
Monday to Friday, nikikuletea some of the major hits out of Africa, your favorite artists and celebrities kwenye exclusive interviews.
Fame is nothing, it is what you do with the fame that counts.
Without forgetting various DJs ambao unawapenda.
What's good everybody, go by the name of Toffaz aka Mr. 5 Star. Catch my mixes live on Kwetu Mix 5 to 6 weekdays only on NTV.
When hit happens, cool down with an ice cold Sprite.
Kwetu Mix in association with Sprite.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
Alright, thank you for staying with us. You're watching AM Live on NTV. It's all about the climate change crisis, the science and the stakes. And that report released yesterday on the 6th failed rain season alert. And that is potentially concerning to many Kenyans across the country. Let me get back to Marceline with still regard to that report that was released yesterday. When we're talking about a 6th failed rain season, in the country, an alert that was sent there. Some will say, these predictions, how accurate can they be? Maybe give us a sense, because you're a weather forecaster, give us a climate forecast, I beg your pardon, but just give us an idea of some of the primary methods that, you've used to come up with this data, and really how accurate are they to say, look, we predict that there's not going to be no rain in the next season.
Okay, so in coming up with the predictions, we use different statistical techniques. So it's the usual techniques that you normally use, like linear regression, logistic regression, canonical correlation analysis. So what we do is we utilize models, from global producing centers, and then using this, we now downscale for our region. So we are bringing them from the global to the regional perspective, and then KMD will also bring it down to the national perspective. And then in terms of how accurate these are, so one thing people need to remember is that these are probabilistic forecasts. So what we normally issue out is what is the chance of below normal, what is the chance of normal, what is the chance of above. So in taking decisions, they should be a way of doing scenario planning, but placing more emphasis on the category that has the highest probabilities. So in this case, we are saying there's a highly likelihood of below normal. So most of the planning should be based on the below normal category.
And most of these predictions are mostly, fall within the accuracy bracket. We end up ends up within that space.
Yes.
All right. Okay, Mary, even as bring it down to our level for us to understand as Kenyans. I know this was an outlook for the Horn of Africa, but you'll be able to give us an idea of how it looks for us as a country. Maybe just tell us what are some of the urgent concerns that we should be aware of as Kenyans with regard to the data that you have now.
One thing that is really obvious over the period that has passed is that we're seeing an obvious increase in temperatures, both maximum, that's daytime temperatures, and nighttime temperatures, and an even steeper rise in nighttime temperatures almost all over the country. And that is translating as it should.
Is it because, that's why we've been, feeling the heat so much intensely over the past couple of months?
Yes, that's part of the reason.
Right.
And could largely be attributed to climate change. And one of the things that is really evident and is expected under climate change is an increase in the frequency and also intensity of climate and weather extremes.
Okay.
And that's one thing the country has experienced. Just in the last 5 years, we've had 3 major disasters. We had extreme flooding in 2018. We had a drought that persisted between 2016 and 2017. And now the current drought that is actually unprecedented, the worst drought in the last 40 years.
All right, so what do we do in terms of, as communities, understanding these predictions? What can communities do to prepare themselves? Do you have an idea of what, or even how they can also be able to predict from where they are on how to mitigate some of these, situations?
At community level, there may be a bit of indigenous knowledge as to how best to cope, though this is unprecedented.
Right.
So it may not be adequate, whatever information they have, the practices may not be adequate to actually help in coping with the situation as it is happening.
All right.
Yes, but what we could do is at least make use of the early warning that's being generated by both the mandated agencies, the Meteorological Department and ICPAC, as it did yesterday. At least once people know what to expect, they can at least better prepare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Lembara, I mean, when you're talking about the early warning systems, for droughts in the country, it's something that we should all be aware of. Now we have the predictions. Here we have it. This is what we expect. Maybe just give us on how we can be able to improve on that aspect moving forward.
On the early warning system, yes, I think as a country we have a functional early warning system. It has been evolving over years, and yes, for early warning system we are looking at 4 key pillars. One key pillar of early warning system is actually risk knowledge. Community is able to anticipate what are the probable risks as information is released. And given now, like with the frequency of the risk is increasing, because the drought, and it's not only the drought, but other climate-related shocks are actually increasing. So the early warning system should be able to enforce that as a key pillar. Second is about the monitoring aspect, where we are looking at how do we improve on the data quality, data collection, and the reliability in terms of the monitoring mechanism. As you need to establish the trends, what's the situation, as well as what are the trends, and also the predictability. How predictable is actually this information, and that's what the ICPAC and KMD has provided. Then the other components is now the dissemination and communication. We need to have robust and functional communication channels that are able to actually utilize and provide that information to the consumer. And that filters now to the fourth pillar, which is response.
Right.
It's early warning, early action. An early warning that has no action is not really an early warning.
Right.
So those are the four pillars that the early warning should be able to speak to. And as a country, that's what we've all made efforts actually to do, that when these predictions are released, we do the scenario planning. We provide and work with the communities and the sectors to be able now to build on what's the implication of that information and what actions needs to go along with that.
Is that already in the offing now that we have the predictions released by IGAD yesterday?
Yes, our county teams, we've already put the teams on high alert that they need to work on the possible scenarios, because okay, these are extreme weather situations that in an event that we have above normal, what the team calls above normal, the likelihood of floods, flash floods in some parts like Tana River and all other belts. Then in an event that we have below normal, it means the probability of drought now continuing is very high. So we have the county teams that are already working to further analyze and synthesize this information for the community's consumption and action.
All right. Sally, I know that your organization is heavily involved in terms of providing humanitarian aid across those who are most vulnerable in the country. I know that there are a couple of challenges that as an organization you face. Maybe give us an idea of what some of those challenges are, and how then can we as a country, as Kenya, be able to improve that aspect of coordination and response to drought, and especially for those most vulnerable.
Maybe just to mention that the report that we shared also highlights that more than 2.4 million livestock has been lost.
Right.
And livestock is a major source of food and also income for the population. And so this has caused starvation and hunger. And also at the International Rescue Committee, we offer drought response in Dadaab and in Kakuma to the refugees and the hosting communities too. And we are seeing a challenge whereby children are having to drop out of school because as their father probably goes far away to look for livestock for their feed, the mothers are left in the house to take care of the chores, and sometimes they also have to walk for kilometers to get water. And so the children are forced to leave school so that they can take care of their other siblings, or even help their parents in doing the house requirements. Also, we are seeing so many parents giving their children off for marriage just to offload their burden in exchange of dowry. And so early marriages is really increasing at a high rate. And what we can do as both the government and donor organizations is to come together, meet frequently, and for better planning through the multi-agency groups, and so that we are able to reach this population.
Is the IRC working with the government in any aspect, in some of the areas? Which areas, and maybe what are some of the work that you've done so far?
Okay, yes, the International Rescue Committee is supporting the government in drought response, and currently in Kakuma and Dadaab we have a health facility whereby we offer medication. We also have a stabilization center where acute malnourished children are admitted. We also offer women protection and empowerment programs because you find that most people who are being affected by drought are vulnerable, and so they've also experienced abuse, maybe sexual, and so we offer the psychosocial support just to ensure that they come back to normal life. We also have education programs where we are able to train the affected persons to develop basic skills which they can use to earn a livelihood and rely less on donor aid.
Right. Marceline, when we're talking about the data that you as an organization are able to collect which essentially really affects the people on the ground. Do you think that that information gets to the ground, to the people who are actually, you know, concerned? And is there a challenge there? Is there a way we can be able to improve?
So to an extent, the information does get to people. So currently we use different ways of disseminating the information. So we use social media, the websites, the email, and then also there are what is called participatory scenario planning, where we go on the ground and information is disseminated. And then there is also like the Climate Outlook Forum that we had yesterday. That's another means of dissemination of information. But as you have said, we could do better. The media can also help out in this dissemination. I'm very sure a lot of people look at TV, look at radios, and then the media can also be able to translate this to the local languages, which can increase the uptake of the climate information that we disseminate.
All right. And say with regards to the data that was released yesterday, when we're looking at that situation, is it likely that the situation in those affected areas, now we're going to have a look at Kenya specifically as a country, are we going to see perhaps an intensified situation through that transition period to May? Is it something?
In terms of intensification of?
Intensification of the data that you've collected, low rainfall, you know, season, I mean low rains, and then also warmer temperatures. Is it, because now we're transiting to that season, right? Is it going to intensify, and how will it look like? How will it look like?
From the month to month analysis, what we see is that in the coming month, like in March, it will be really dry than usual. And then moving on to April, and April is the time where we receive the highest amount of rainfall. And that time will also be dry. But when we move to May, the situation might slightly improve. But that's towards the end of the season, which we don't normally receive a lot of rainfall. And then going into June, that's like more of a dry season over this region.
Yeah. And then now we'll have to also then weigh the next season as we're going through this season.
Yes.
All right.
So we have to, so the next season where we receive rainfall over most parts of Kenya will be the October, November, December. So people have to go through the dry season of June, July, August, September.
All right. Yeah. Mary, I know we have, you know, predictions and forecasting with just season by season, but as a Met department, do we have the capacity to be able to predict how our weather will look, how our climate looks over a long period of time, maybe years to come? Is that something that's possible to do?
Well, that is usually not a prediction, but a projection.
Okay.
So we have climate change
so that those are two different things, prediction and projection.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So we have climate change projections that actually point to a future, a warmer future. And over East African region, it's expected to have, to experience an increase in rainfall. It's still called the East African paradox because it's not yet fully understood going by the trends that are already observed.
Yeah.
But generally, most of the models agree that we are likely to see an increase in rainfall and an obvious increase in temperatures. And what's even more obvious is the kind of increase in extremes that would be expected. So we expect more frequent droughts and more frequent floods.
But this is also impacted by the global, you know, situation.
Yes, it's a global phenomenon. That's the reason why over other parts of the world, we're also seeing extremes. Like, for example, last year we saw the unprecedented heat waves over much of Europe. We've seen flooding in Pakistan and other places in the world. It's a general trend.
Yeah. So we're all interconnected.
Yes, yes.
All right, all right. When we're talking about technology, Lembara, and innovation, there's a lot that has come out in terms of how we can be able to harness technology and innovation and be able to, mitigate the impacts of drought. Maybe give us an idea of how we as a country can be able to harness that to, traverse through this climate change crisis that we're facing.
Thank you very much. Just before I answer that, I just put a agenda on the coordination mechanism in terms of drought response.
Correct.
We have functional coordination structures, right from the national level to the sub-county levels, and the sector working groups. And what we are doing as a coordinating agency, we are working with all partners from the government level, from the government and the governmental, to ensure that the information, the early warning information is utilized, and the contingency plans are also activated and acted upon. And the reporting, most important is actually the reporting. So all partners, like now we have 92 partners have been able to respond, and so far we've documented the report on the response mechanism. We have over 80 billion has been injected into the response mechanism. Government giving over 30 billion. The other partners, development partners, giving over 48 billion. And now the private sector-led initiative, 600 million. So that's the coordination that is ongoing. And we are working, even at the community level, we have those community structures that actually ensure proper targeting and efficiency in terms of the ongoing drought response. Coming to the issue of technology. Technology is actually an opportunity that we have to see that we reduce the lead time in terms of response mechanism.
Right.
And we've worked with partners actually to see that. For us, historically, what has happened in Kenya is actually delayed, and not only in Kenya, but delayed response. You have early warning, but then it's not actually commensurate with the actions. Technology has been able to provide us that, and we have the systems, we have developed systems with the clear thresholds. When we have this climate information, we are able to develop thresholds on given various livelihoods. So in terms of early warning system, yes, we've tapped into technologies, what she has talked about in terms of the models, a number of satellite imagery, remote sensor information is going into this, and all that is actually anchored in technology. Come to the analysis, yes, we are able also to do analysis in good time. So I will look at it from the early warning part, and also the resilience building now and the response. So from the early warning, I've mentioned that that's critical, and we have tapped into that technology. All what they are talking about is actually about technology that has enabled efficiency in early warning system. In terms of resilience, when you look at, I don't want to go into the big debate about biotechnology. It's also technology.
Right.
And then on the issue of putting on or establishing sensors, we have also been able to have a monitoring mechanism for the investments that are ongoing in resilience building. And then the most importantly, coming to response. Currently, we've shifted as a country to more of cash transfers than actually conventional relief distribution. And that cash transfer has actually been successful because of the single registry infrastructure. And it's as a courtesy of technology. So a lot of response has gone, like the money I've told you about, 80 billion. Close to 50% has gone into cash transfers.
How does it work, the cash transfer program? Do you use the mobile system? How does it work?
Okay, we have a number of, yes, it's about mobile system and as well as the bank system. So we have developed in 4 counties, we have registered all households in Turkana, Marsabit, Mandera, Wajir, and now we are expanding to additional 4, covering Samburu, Garissa, Tana River, and Isiolo. So the single registry is that we have all the households registered. And that will make efficiency in terms of targeting, because we are all partners. If you are in water, in health, you're able to actually access that data and be able to provide the necessary support. So it has come in handy, technology. And then one aspect that it has also instilled is actually the dignity of the beneficiaries, that they're able to withdraw this money. They don't queue for relief food anymore. So that's technology we are talking about. It has actually assisted in terms of how we do the business process.
Is there a system of accountability on this?
Yes, we have a grievance and addressing mechanism. We have also community-based mechanism that they are able to see that yes, Zainab did not receive her cash, and we have the committees that are addressing those issues. And then frequency, the MIS system is also able to monitor that so and so has not been able to withdraw the cash. So it's a big milestone in terms of the response.
Yeah. All right, and certainly looking forward to hearing more about that, at least, and be able to see how that, you know, has worked for the communities in those different parts of the country. Marceline, I mean, you know, technological advancement is something that all countries in the world are trying to embrace in terms of coming in and trying to traverse through this climate change crisis. Have there been any advancement in terms of technology when we're talking about the predictions, when we're looking at the trends in terms of climate? Talk to us about that.
So in terms of that, there's been a lot. There's been tremendous advancement. So for example, when we are running the models, you need high performance computing systems.
Right.
So over the past years, this has really improved. So this has allowed us to be able to run a model at finer scale. So we can now capture at least the local effects. So talking about lakes that might not have been captured, the topography, now we are able to capture that. And then we can also see in terms of observations, surface observations, I think Mary can touch more on that one. There has been an improvement of the automatic weather stations that can actually send the data automatically. And then now we are also moving into 3D printing, which is much cheaper. And considering that over most parts of our region, we don't have a lot of surface observations, so this can actually improve. And then we can see even in terms of the downscaling, I think you have had a lot of buzz in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning. So these are also new techniques that we are employing in improving the weather forecasts and the climate forecasts. And then in terms also of cloud computing, so if you don't have the infrastructure, you are able to access the cloud computing and do your calculations in the cloud. So there has been a lot of advancement in terms of prediction.
All right. Yeah. But as climate scientists, you know, you tend to use usually very advanced language, at least for the rest of the people who don't usually understand how, what some of these words mean, what they potentially could, you know, do for us. Are you able to, once you've collected the data, do you, what is the process? What process, what does it take to sort of cut it down for it to be able to be understood properly by governments, by those, you know, stakeholders who are involved, to be able to now bring it closer to home and try and, you know, mitigate around that situation?
So I think what you have said is very true. We have been accused a lot of times that we are just talking to ourselves. We are not communicating to everyone else. So what we are really trying to do is to simplify the language, make the language in an easy way that everyone can understand. And then we are also trying to move away from just issuing a forecast and saying it will be below normal, above normal, or normal, to say what is it going to do, right? So let's say we say there is a flood coming, there is heavy rainfall coming. We just don't end up saying there is heavy rainfall that is coming. But we can include information that this heavy rainfall can disrupt the road, so it will be difficult to, it will take more time for people on the road. So that way people can easily understand. And then for policymakers, we usually have a policy document at the end of each Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook. We release a policy statement that is more simplified in terms of the language, and then in there we also include what are the likely impacts and what can people do to avert the negative or take advantage of the positive forecast.
All right. Yes, Lembar.
Yes, thank you. I think just a rejoin on that. As they do this analysis and is shared across the stakeholders, we've worked with a number of partners at the county level just to make sure that this information is further refined.
Correct.
In terms of advisory, what advisories goes to the communities, and that's what now participatory scenario planning means. If it's about livestock sector,
right.
Now below normal, what is the implication? It implies that we are going likely to migrate further. So what and technology has provided also as that platform to be able to communicate in terms of probably bulk SMSs, radio channels, FM radios. So technology has actually assisted in a big way to ensure that the uptake of this information is actually reaching out. So from here now, as they release that information, that's what will engage the county teams in the next 1 month or so to actually develop and disseminate their advisories.
All right.
And then follow up also. The sectors will have followed up on the actions that are being worked out, like disease monitoring, like a number of issues. But then just to mention some of the losses, she mentioned 2.4 million livestock. So far, the report actually brings out we've lost over 2.6 million livestock, the equivalent of 1.8 billion in terms of losses already. Right. And then in terms of wildlife, we lost 1,180 wildlife.
Different species of wildlife?
Different species, but predominantly elephants.
This is data within what period? Between what and what?
I think from the peak of from 2021 up to date, we've lost 1,180 wildlife.
That's actually a really big number.
Yes.
When you look at it, looking at it like that. All right, but can we get classification? Maybe when we come back after the break, you can. That data is not available.
Okay, the KWS provided the breakdown, but I have not come with the breakdown. But I know the bigger number is actually elephants.
Elephants.
Yes.
They have suffered the most.
Yes.
All right. Sally, we'll come back to you, but we have to take a quick break. You're watching M Live on NTV. Talk to us. The hashtag we're using is MLive NTV at NTV Kenya. Zainab Ismail. It's all about climate change and how we navigate through this situation as a country, as a continent, and as a globe as well. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. All right, and thank you for staying with us once again as we converse around this issue of the climate change and, of course, focusing on the drought situation in the country. Sally, I'm going to get to you now. When we're talking about the response that, you offered to communities the most affected by the drought, because this is something that has prolonged over a very long period of time, the worst drought in 40 years. How then do you, as an organization, at least, and the efforts that you put into this, ensure that this is sustainable and long-lasting?
Before I get to that, allow me to comment a bit on the technology part. And I think as an organization, we need to develop smart farming techniques that is less reliant on rain and more reliant on irrigation, so that in the event of absence of rain, we still have crops and we are able to sustain livelihood. Also, if we are able to diversify livelihoods of the people affected by drought, because we see most of them are either farmers or livestock keepers. So if there's a way, probably the government and the humanitarian workers can come together and work more in diversifying the livelihoods of the affected population, so that they are still able to survive even in drought. About the response and just to be able to perhaps ensure that is effective, since the drought has been recurrent for quite a long period of time. Like I said earlier, we offer stabilization to children who are malnourished, and what we are advocating for is a method called the simplified combined protocol, which calls for all humanitarian workers to adopt. the process is simple, is cost effective and easy to upscale, and is also more effective. And this is whereby children who are moderately acute malnourished and severely acute malnourished are treated the same way. So if we can all, we are still urging the United Nations and all other humanitarian agencies to adopt the simplified combined protocol, enabled to save more lives. Yes.
All right. Mary, very quickly, I mean, on the 1st of February, I was just getting that report. The Kenya Met Department in that report said that there's going to be, the heat temperatures will remain significantly high. In first week of February, Nairobi's highest temperature measurement hit 32 degrees Celsius. And a lot of Kenyans complaining about the temperatures there. And you projected as a department that the high temperatures will continue for the next couple of weeks until around mid of March of this year. Kenyans are probably listening and wondering, what do we do about it? What advice would you give, as a department? You've predicted that this is the situation, and indeed we're in this situation. What is the advice you're going to give Kenyans? How do we navigate around this, temperature?
Okay, yes, a lot has been said about that. And one obvious thing that is really important to do is to really keep hydrated, because the heat has a dehydrating effect, which would have a bad consequence on our health. And to the extent possible, stay indoors or under a shade if you have to be outside. But of course, this is not always possible depending on the nature of work that someone is doing. But we really should limit the amount of exposure to direct sunlight to the extent possible.
And what else? Is there something else that we need to know apart from just taking care of ourselves and drinking water to avoid dehydration, staying indoors, at least if you can manage to do that? Anything else that we need to keep in mind?
Of course, technology allowing, depending on the facilities that you have, to be good to use aircon.
Okay.
And that could be in the house or the cars when you're driving, because it's tending to be really hot, especially out there. Yes.
All right. Let me get to you, Marceline. We're about to wind up, and I don't want us to miss a couple of the solutions that we need to have, as a country, especially, Kenya. I know you have the climate prediction for the Horn of Africa, but from where you sit and the policy makers, you've given them solutions and perhaps what they can be able to do. You can just tell us, what are some of these things that we need to look forward, or we need to look at and keep in mind from the data that you're giving us as a country? What are some of the solutions that, from where you sit, we'll be able to harness from, solutions that we need to look at, challenges that are there, gaps that we need to fill as communities, as policymakers, and also just as a country?
Okay. So in terms of the climate production, what we normally do is go through a co-production process. So when we come up with these solutions, it's not up to the forecasters themselves to come up with these solutions, but we come up with these solutions together with all the stakeholders. So like he has mentioned, we have the different sectors coming up. So we have like the agriculture, the livestock, health, all the different, the DRIM coming together. So some of the solutions that we devise are mostly also an input from the different people who are experts in those fields, in those areas. So for example, now when you look at the agricultural sector, they are proposing that they should be focused on short maturing crops over most parts of Kenya, since we are predicting that the rains will be below normal. And then there are also other issues for health, like there is an impact, like you are saying, the temperatures will be high, so people should need to keep hydrated. And then they also talk about issues concerning malaria. So most of the solutions should be co-produced rather than a scientist saying do this.
Advising.
Because yes, right. Because if it's also coming from you, you know why you are doing it. and you can actually really do it rather than being told to do this. Yeah.
All right. And when we're looking at this current change, you know, the trend in terms of the weather patterns, how can we better address them in the future?
So I think there's a need for coming up with adaptation strategies of our region, looking at what is our major problem and how can we address this. And from this, I think looking at most of Kenya, Sub-Saharan Africa, one of the major issues is we mostly depend on rain-fed agriculture. So we need to think of other ways of, if the rainfall is erratic, what else can we do so that we maintain productivity of our region. And I think there are now so many things coming up, the use of artificial intelligence, the use of a lot of technology, drip irrigation, which can conserve water. So I think those are some of the things that we can really focus on to reduce the impact.
Lemba, when we're looking at communities and how they can be able to prepare themselves against some of the impacts of climate change, like drought, and because that's your field, do we need more tools and resources to be able to work around how we are able to mitigate and adapt to those situations?
Thank you. Just to add on the technology, I think in terms of resilience, we also have, besides the digitized borehole installation systems that basically brings the issue of water resource governance, because we see water resource management is a big issue, and especially when it comes to governance. That technology has been able to provide that opportunity to enhance the governance, because the revenues accrued from the water resource are actually increasing and are ensuring sustainability. Yes, coming to your question on both communities and the preparation that they need to have is actually we need to see the holistic disaster risk management as an integral part of development other than standalone.
Okay.
And that's the advocacy that we are taking forward and putting communities at the center, because they need to own the risk, and understand the risks that they are exposed to, and what are the implications in terms of planning and mechanisms that they need to put in place. For us and other partners, we've worked to ensure that we focus on the world level contingency planning, where the communities are able to champion and see what are the risks and what are the plans that they need to work with their development partners, basically to implement those plans. One of the challenges has been actually having real-time resources to trigger or to facilitate the community to implement those plans. And we've seen some counties activating the world-level climate adaptation fund. We've seen Isiolo, we have Kitui, and Garissa counties have actually passed their county assemblies. And that's aimed at ensuring that the counties or the communities at the lower level have access to resources to act early. Communities on their initiatives have also their own contingency funds they have been able to mobilize in good time, maybe destocking or on water issues. So that's what we need to put across. And then just to ensure that community plans are integrated, the county integrated plans and the county contingency plans should be able to articulate and also support communities to realize this. Risk financing is actually a big issue in the country, and not only in the country, globally. As a country, we've done well. We have now the National Drought Emergency Fund that's operational, and the purpose of this fund is actually to have a real-time fund that is available, so that as you have the early warning, it facilitates the early action. So communities will be having access to these resources. So the fund is already operational. We've disbursed some money to the counties to support these initiatives. The fund has three components. One is actually the resilience building and preparedness, which now supports the community initiatives in terms of preparatory actions. Two is the response now to mitigate the effects during the drought effect. And then three, the recovery, just facilitating that they are able to bounce back better. So Yes, the institution arrangement also, the community organizations is primary in terms of ensuring that we have champions that are able to facilitate uptake of this the early warning information. So what options? Because the adaptive capacities also needs to be realized. And this is anchored on the community's attitude change. Because it's very, very important.
But that has been a big challenge.
It is because now, like in our Kenyan context, crop is actually maize. And we know, like now the prediction is saying that probably maize is not viable. So what information do we take to the communities to adjust?
Now you can imagine, for example, when you have the pastoralist communities, how do you change that mindset? Have there been conversations with those communities on the ground? Are we seeing any positive change in terms of how they're doing, things, their way of life? Is it changing to try and open up, diversification in terms of them looking at crops and farming and something different from what they naturally, have been doing?
Yes, the government policy, and we are looking at agriculture in terms of the holistic value chain, not only production. As we promote diversification in terms of production, but how is the value chain all the way to the market. For pastoralists, that's the journey in terms of how do they destock in good time. And we are working to incentivize commercial destocking, because it's very important that we have the communities being able to destock on their own at good time, other than waiting for the slaughter of tax and which comes later. So that's the messaging, and it requires a lot of effort and collaborative efforts to make sure that we have that attitude change, that the communities are able to act earlier. Because you can get pastoralists who lost over 100 cattle, but that was a rich household. If they manage to sell or float that, given the early warning information, and that's what we are struggling with in the pastoral setups.
Right.
So we are joining hands with all partners to ensure that the market information is relayed, to ensure that at least it is incentivized. It's about the market system being functional. Because our pastoralists they are delivering is bull, and it fetches 5,000.
Yeah.
It's not an incentive at all.
Yeah.
So that's what we are working to ensure that we
like in, for example, in Kajiado County, there were reports of herds of cattle, and many cattle dying because the farmers there said they were unwilling to sell the cattle because of the low cost, and of course that has hindered that, the system, and which means then it is a disadvantage to them, because the cattle are still dying, and at the end of it all, they're not getting any incentive.
Yes.
So that's quite a big challenge.
And that is now the issue of slaughter of take is actually meant to provide the salvage value for that for the TLU that is targeted.
Yeah.
But then the emphasis is actually the early action in that is commercial, or the destocking, that they're able to offload. And that's now what we need to ensure that the markets are functional throughout to attract better prices.
Correct.
And then the issue of what is it that what incentives do we give also to the livestock traders? Because livestock traders are the first consumers of the early warning information. Immediately they see and sense that the situation is worsening, they withdraw from markets.
Right.
That's what suffocates the market. So it becomes an issue. So we are working to ensure that what incentives do we provide by like having holding grounds for these traders to be able to hold for a certain period.
Right.
Those are the strategies that are in the discussion right now.
All right. Yes, Ali.
I just wanted to give more information on funds which he has talked about, and just to emphasize that drought response in Kenya still remains highly underfunded, and which is limiting humanitarian organization and even the government to be able to reach a wider number of people in order to save lives. And probably what needs to be done is all stakeholders involved, donor countries, the government, and even individuals who are able to give towards the drought response should all come and support so that we are able to even diversify livelihoods among the affected communities. Like in Turkana, one of the things we are doing is we are seeing people who are reliant on livestock and farming are now engaged in other economic activities like hairdressing, maybe applying, they're being taught on beauty, and so they are able to make more income through other diversified methods. So yes.
And because we're almost running out of time, I'm still going to begin with you, Sally. Your final remarks as we move forward. IRC has been working with Kenya for a long period of time in terms of mitigating the drought situation in the country. What are some of the key takeaways at least we can get from you? What we all need to go away with is to know that if something is not done, we are going to lose more lives. We are going to lose more livestock. And so this calls upon everyone to come together to be able to save more lives. And also as an organization, we also still continue to emphasize on the simplified combined protocol that can be used to treat malnourished children and enable them to continue with their life normally as other children. All right. Mary, I'll get to you. Key takeaways as we move forward, and especially when we're talking about informing the policy decisions that we get from the data that we receive from the, at least, Kenya Meteorological Department.
It's one very important thing to do that has already been highlighted going forward, and we've to an extent been trying to do so, is collaboration, strengthen partnerships and collaborations, because for the early warning information to be useful, it's got to be actionable, and for action to be taken, it's got to be relevant to the various sectors, and that information as to how relevant, what is relevant information for the various sectors can only come through from the sectors, the stakeholders, and that can be done through co-production. So co-production is really key, and at the same time we also really need to continue researching so as to improve our forecasts, because we still have a challenge in some of the forecasts, especially for this season. It's very challenging, so a lot of research is underway just to see how we can improve it at seasonal time scales.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Marceline, your final remarks as we move forward, and also just key takeaways from that report. I know you highlighted it. We also did that. You have that in the report. Moving forward, what do we need to keep in mind as a country?
So maybe I can start off with the key highlights from the report, especially over parts of Kenya. So the key highlights included that we'll likely receive below normal rainfall, and then the onset is likely to be delayed. And then if we look at over parts of northern Kenya and some parts of eastern Kenya, we are not likely to even have the start of the rainfall onset as we define it. So we define the start of the rainfall onset as water that is required for maize to germinate. So we can see from those parts, there is not, that onset will not be established. And then temperatures will be warmer than usual, so that's likely to exacerbate the dry conditions that are currently prevailing. As we move forward, I think one of the most critical parts is for us to work on continuously improving the focus, and then also the strategies that, no problem, and then also taking up the strategies to mitigate the negative impacts. And I think I would call upon everyone to put together the science that we are learning so that we can improve our livelihoods over the country. Yeah.
Thank you, and I beg your pardon. Let me just get Mr. Lembara.
Okay, thank you. My sentiment is actually to appreciate the partnership that we have, and seek that the stakeholders, we further strengthen our coordination mechanism, which is already there. And we also, the last week report also was associated with an appeal by the government. It has been, we are estimating over a resource gap of over 50 billion up to October. And we seek that we strengthen the partnership to mobilize resources towards that. At the same time, we working with a number of, all the stakeholders at both national and county level to ensure that we further strengthen the coordination and also dissemination of the information, especially on participatory scenarios, given the predicted long-range situation. So we look forward that we continue partnership and we strengthen the reporting also, because it's very important that and as an agency, a government agency, that's what we are working to ensure that we have proper plans, we have accountability mechanism on the resources that are being directed to drought response.
Well, thank you so much, Lembara Sayana, Programs Director at National Drought Management Authority, Mary Kilavi, who is the Assistant Director, Public Weather Services from the Kenya Met Department. Thank you so much, Marceline Gudushava, Climate Forecaster from the IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, and Sally Anyanga, who's the East Africa Regional Communications Officer, International Rescue Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, asante sana for having this conversation with us this morning. There's still so much we needed to have a discussion around, but we'll certainly put that conversation for another day. And of course, we'll be looking forward to just seeing how the situation will look like for us as a country in the next couple of weeks and months and years as well. All right, this is where we wrap it up on NTV AM Live. Thank you so much for watching. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe, and I beg your pardon for my slight coughing. I shall be having some lemon water in a moment. My name is Zainab Ismail. Thank you for watching. Have yourself a good morning and good day.